Hello everyone, welcome to the Truth Podcast. This is your host, Vishnu, and we got Darwin here. Yeah, and we'll just start off by introducing ourselves right away. So my name is Vishnu. I'm 20 years old. Right now I'm doing a double major in accounting and finance. What made me particularly want to do that major is, in business, it's really hard to learn the numbers down. However, ideas, they do come and go. But the numbers is something that you can't just learn unless you really go to school or you indulge in certificates and stuff like that. So that's definitely what made me want to do finance. And then my decade ambition for the upcoming decade is to own a multi-million-dollar franchise. And the rational steps I'm taking are like doing this podcast, right? A lot of certificates, a lot of reading, right? So that's definitely one of my goals. By the time I hit 30, I do want a multi-million franchise like McDonald's or Tim Hortons. So in saying that, my lifelong ambition is to hopefully one day, at the age of Warren Buffett, at the age of 20, Warren Buffett had 100,000 in assets, inflation included. So during his time, it was about 10,000. To this date, I have $250,000 in assets. So at the age of 56, Warren Buffett was a billionaire, right? So my goal is to definitely acquire a lot of capital, right? That's definitely a big goal of mine. Not for the reason of buying expensive cars, buying a big house. That's not particularly one of my interests. It's definitely to make my mark and make a global change, right? So whatever my worldview is at that time, I definitely want to push it out. Whether that be philanthropy, whether that be politics, whether that be space exploration, anything along those lines. However, right now I'm very intrigued by philanthropy. I've been home a couple times, India, and the situations back home are very sad, right? So some of the situations and circumstances people are in, it's very sad. So I don't want to make a contribution towards just one individual. I want to make it at a global stage where the world is impacted from it. So that's definitely one of my goals. Yeah. And Darwin, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Wow, yeah, man, I feel like I should be interviewing you. That's very impressive. And we got Buffett right behind us. We're quoting Buffett already. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So my name is Darwin Lee, and I've been in IT for a couple decades now, and I'm called a program manager. And so the IT world is sort of where my career has been, and I do quite a few other things as well.
No, definitely.
I'm a speaker. I'm a podcaster like you, so nice to meet a fellow podcaster.
Yep.
And do some coaching, some leadership coaching, and then in the sports world, I've coached some reasonably high level teams in a sport called drag, was like a big long canoe.
Yep.
And was co-coach of the Canadian national team that the Worlds has been canceled just because of the fallout from COVID, but was a co-coach for the national adaptive dragon boat team.
That was impressive.
Yeah. And coached a world champion adaptive dragon boat team, which was a total thrill, and had a chance to meet some amazing people and work with some amazing athletes.
Yep.
And then on the other side of things, I'm a stock investor. I've been investing for quite a few years. Had some ups and downs, but thankfully it's kind of more ups than downs, and had some successes here and there. So that's been great. It's been a great experience. And here's some of the guys here, and Buffett, one of the greatest investor of all time.
Definitely,
for sure, one of my heroes, and all these fellows are for sure. Yeah. So it's nice to be in their company. Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to talking to you, and I am so thankful that you asked me to be on your podcast for the first time. What an honor! Thank you so much.
No, definitely, man. Like I'm humbled to have you, right? Like you're a very smart guy, right? Very intelligent. So it'll be fun to pick at your brain, see what the answers that you come up with. So during this podcast, we will be asking Darwin some very, very tough questions, and just so you guys can get some different scenarios and what he would be thinking about in different circumstances, right? So that's what this podcast is, right? We're just gonna pick at his brain and learn a couple of things from Darwin.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
awesome.
get into it. So I do have a set of questions lined up for Darwin, and I asked him to use the STAR method. It's an analogy that we got from Amazon. So that'll just ensure that you guys get the best experience of all the stories that he gives. Yeah, so we'll just get right into it. So Darwin, the first question is, can you give me an example of a calculated risk you have taken where speed was critical? What was the situation and how did you handle it?
So I can think of a couple examples, and one is sort of from my personal life and one is sort of from the financial world. So I can do one or the other, but
Yeah.
I'll start with the personal one. And when I was about your age, actually,
Yeah.
so I am going a different path, and the path you're on is awesome.
Thank
and
you.
I'm sure you're going to accelerate by me, which is
Thank you.
totally awesome. I look forward
Thank
to
you.
all the
Thank
great things
you.
you're going to do.
Thank you, man.
And the world needs what you're going to bring to it. So keep going.
Thank you, man.
And so I was about your age and I did an engineering degree. And when I did the engineering degree, I went through the co-op program, you do internships and stuff like that. And I saw a posting for a work term in Japan.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm Chinese by descent, although Canadian. I'm not Japanese. But when I saw that, so in going through the engineering program, I really didn't like it.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I'll just finish it and then I was going to become a physiotherapist. But then I saw this posting and I thought, well, that's a chance to really get a different kind of experience. And I felt that experience could bring me something that would be hard to get any other way, just to be, in a different culture. And because of how the timelines were, by this time I saw that brochure, I only had a couple days to make that decision. And that there was a lot of time pressure, and I had just started work in the previous term. They were asking for something a year in the future. So I thought, well, I've always been somewhat of a risk taker.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I filled it out and just thought, if this happens, it'll be a great experience. So what happened was I was lucky enough to get a posting in Japan. And that single decision has changed my life in a number of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the first was really being in a culture where you're in the minority. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I think everyone should experience, because it changes the way you think and relate to other people when you're not in the majority group. Yeah. And people thinking that I was Japanese also led me to understand the need for communication. And how people were, it's not a bad thing, it's natural, but people thought I was Japanese all the time. That's a natural assumption. But then having to explain every day, multiple times a day that I wasn't, and realizing from there the need to understand the perspective of the other person.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in going through that work term, I learned about databases, which led me into the world of IT. Yeah. That changed my career. And it also affected me in a different way, because what I understood from that experience and learned, not only going into IT, is also, it gave me an insight into a massively growing field. Yeah. Which led me, rather than going to physiotherapy, changed my career, went into IT. And that gave me sort of an inside sight into what was coming in IT. And it's not anything special that I had. It's just that I suppose since I was on the inside working in IT, mm-hmm. I could see some of the things before they were coming. So I knew well before Blockbuster was going to go away, well before. Yeah. I knew it was going to go away. And I knew that streaming was coming.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. And so I believe that it's the things around us that if we pay attention, will give us a lot of opportunity as far as like stock investing and looking at future trends, and trying to find those trends and address them can give us a lot of success. And those are a few things that work term gave to me. And that's when I started Dragon Boat as well. And that opened a whole other world of athletics, which eventually led into coaching. So it all kind of tied together. Yeah. That experience. Yeah. I can talk about the financial one also, but I don't know how your time is. If you want me to, I can.
No, that's definitely interesting, right? So when you did initially get that job posting, right? Was this for an IT posting or?
So it was interesting because I was studying engineering, and what they were offering me was something in a field I knew nothing about. I didn't even know what a database was. Yeah. And so what I found out later was the Canadian ambassador to Japan was personal friends with the company where I ended up working. Wow. Yeah. And so it was just as a favor to the ambassador, they picked up a student every year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they could have hired someone local, like easily. Yeah. But also I was there to kind of introduce my coworkers to sort of a Western influence and a chance for them to learn English, right? That's so win-win that way. But that opened up the world because I learned from zero, from nothing. Mm-hmm. And then basically self-taught. Obviously my boss and my coworkers were great. They helped.
Definitely. Yeah, it definitely looks like it had a massive, good experience on you, right? Like, it
Absolutely.
definitely changed your worldview, right?
Yeah.
So, you know how you dabbled into that, like, you were to predict that Blockbuster wouldn't be around anymore, right? Is there any streaming venues that you predict will be very high in market, as well as like to be very profitable in the future? Like, let's say biotech, space exploration. Do you have any predicaments for the future?
There's a few that I don't think will come as a secret. It's just a matter of how they shake out. And I think like energy storage is one.
Yeah.
And people think of it in terms of batteries and Teslas.
Yeah.
But I think it's a bigger discussion than that. It's really how can we store that energy efficiently and use it in a way that allows society to prosper and to get out of, the carbon, the gas-based, oil-based fuels.
Yeah.
Another area that's emerging is cryptocurrency. Now, I think cryptocurrency is misunderstood, and I think understanding it a little bit better. By no means am I an expert, but I am interested in it.
Yeah.
It's viewed as purely as an investment class, but I think it's much more than that. It's created and it aspires to solve problems in finance, decentralized finance, and those applications are being developed now. It's just too new.
Definitely.
So looking at which one of those emerges is a very interesting question right now.
Yeah.
So people are looking at it as just an investment that can make them a lot of money. And I understand that, and more power to them if they think it, and I hope it does for them. But I think the reason behind the invention of cryptocurrency is more important right now to understand than the cryptocurrency themselves, because the application is where a lot of future investment will come, if that makes sense.
No, I definitely agree with you. Like Ethereum, the NFT, right? Like contract based, right? So it's definitely more than just an investment, right? So I definitely agree with you there, right? And talking about storage capacity, I never thought of it that way. That's a very interesting viewpoint, right? Yeah. You can definitely dabble into the financial aspects of it as well, right? That's very interesting, right? So I would definitely love to hear your point of view on that as well.
Sorry, financial aspect as far as...
So like for the question, like the calculator...
the other story?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other story,
Yeah. So the stock market is a place where you can make or you can lose money.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I'm a buy and hold investor. I look far into the future.
Long term.
Okay. And so for me, the ups and downs and the dips are not so much a problem for me, because when the stock market drops precipitously, those are times that I view my favorite stocks are on at a discount.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And most people in the stock market view it too emotionally.
Yeah.
Okay. And emotions are okay, but they have to go hand in hand with logic.
Definitely.
So at the beginning of COVID, when there was a big drop in the markets, and it happened several times, there were several gigantic dips.
Yeah.
Most people were quite worried about their future, or worried about that they lost, their life savings, that the investment counts had gone down by such a massive value. And I understand that, and I felt it too.
Yeah.
I completely understand that. And one friend of mine gave me a call and said, I know you're into stocks. I'm really worried. And someone that they knew had just sold out of their entire investment portfolio. Yeah. And it caused them to think I should sell out too. And that's the worst thing you could do.
Definitely.
Because then you lock in the losses.
Yeah.
So I talked him out of it, and thankfully he didn't sell. But what I did was I knew from the valuation of the market that there was some overvaluation before the fall of the stock markets, because there's a number of signs if you just if you're aware of watching what those might be.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd already built up maybe, we could say more of a cash allocation that I would normally carry.
Yeah.
And so I was ready to jump in. And what happened was when the stock market dropped, I jumped in with that cash, and then it rose up very quickly. And I don't generally recommend that people do this. And I do it very rarely, except in the case, as in this case, of extraordinary opportunity, which is what I saw.
Yeah.
I took out a small loan, which I could have covered easily if it went to zero.
Yeah.
I took out a small loan and put it into Zoom at the time that it dropped 40%.
That's very risky.
Yeah. So it went back up a month later.
Definitely.
And I pocketed the difference, and it covered the interest that I paid on the loan was a difference of, I think it was 25 or 30 times.
Oh, wow.
So based on the amount that I risked, so to speak, I made 25 to 30 times the amount.
That's crazy.
So that was the first drop.
Yeah.
And then I was just watching the market, and I could see those were extraordinary times for anyone that was in the market. And it dropped again. Did the same thing. Yeah. And capitalized again.
Again.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Repeated the same thing, and again it was 25 to 30 times what I ended up paying as interest. Yeah. And so those are the opportunities that I took and I saw to go back to the original question that I risked and I was ready for at the moment whenever it came up. And if it never did, I never would have taken those steps. Really? But because the opportunities presented themselves, I was ready, I was prepared. I knew which market indicators to watch for, and I knew I had a general sense of what the market is doing. No one knows what's going to happen in the market. Definitely. My point is that I was ready if it dropped, and I took advantage. Yeah.
So as a long-term holder, right, I definitely think Zoom's here to stay, right? As the way we're innovating towards COVID, right? Zoom's definitely here to stay, right? Even for me, meetings have been on Zoom, right? So as a long-term holder, do you still own Zoom, or is it completely out of your portfolio?
I have a small position, and it's getting more tempting. Yeah. And this is another area to the original thing we were talking about. This is another area where this is only going to grow. Yeah. Video conferencing, and in the future, I believe there will be things like more virtual reality. We'll be sitting around a table. There'll be images of people that are not actually there. Yeah. Kind of like in the Avengers movies, where they have the people sitting around the table. It's just a virtual image of them. Those types of things are coming.
No, definitely. Yeah. No, it's very interesting, right? Yeah. Stock market, it's good you were capitalizing on opportunities, right? I myself, I actually bought Warren Buffett stock, Berkshire Hathaway.
Hey, good for you.
Yeah, I bought it at 173. It's definitely very undervalued. It's definitely grown since then. I think it's at 295 now. So obviously my position isn't as high as yours, right? You have way more capital to play with, but I did profit.
That's great. Yeah, that's terrific. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was very interesting. Yeah, so let's move on to the second question. What's the coolest thing you've learned on your own that you've been able to apply in your job and perform your job further?
I think there's a few things I've learned, and one of them I've touched on already, which is that I think everyone should have some sense of what it's like to be in a minority or to be in a minority group. I don't mean racially, but I mean in a group where you don't represent the majority, and you have to try harder to influence other people. Definitely. Because that builds skills in communication, to be able to represent your vision, those kinds of things. Some other things I've learned on the way that are more interesting are, one of them is that I believe everyone should at some point manage a group of volunteers. Yeah. And the reason is because, so I'm in management now. Okay. And in management, one of the things that I've learned about management is that there's different levels of leadership. Okay. And there's a difference between managing and leading people, but I won't get into that. But when you're in a position where you're the boss or someone is your boss, it's very clear. Yeah. I'm reporting to my boss. If I'm assigned something, I'm going to deliver it to the best I can. If I'm going to assign it, I'm going to give whatever they need to try and get that done. Definitely. And I'm going to support them best I can. Yeah. And, if I ask for something on, by the end of October, it might be because my boss is asking me and I'm going to represent that for my boss. Yeah. But when you have a volunteer base that you're in charge of, you don't have that position of authority. Mm-hmm. And so it's a good exercise for people to be able to manage a large volunteer base, or not a large, but a large volunteer base, because then you don't have the authority to rely on. Yeah. And when you don't have the authority to rely on, it builds the skills that you need to be able to influence people in a more winsome and a more charismatic, in a way that they will harmonize with them, that you don't have and therefore you will grow more as a person and as a leader, and it'll make you more effective. And I've learned this in a number of different ways, but one of them would be it with the club where I was head coach. And you're always with a sports club, you're always, depending on volunteers to help with events, to help with fundraisers, all those kinds of things. And you don't have the ability to influence something by telling them because they're volunteers.
No, definitely.
And so you have to find a way to relate to them and get them to connect with why you're doing what you're doing. And that builds a lot of skill. And if you're able to master that, then it helps you in all the other facets of your life. Communication, relating to other people, understanding where a person's coming from, trying to relate what you're doing with the reason that they're volunteering and making that connection. Those are all things that matter.
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting because you actually answered a very tough question for me, right? So recently I've been looking into volunteering. I actually got the opportunity to be a leader organizer. It's in Morocco though, right? So it's just more of a financial capital. Is it worth the investment, right? So I would be delegating teachers to different classrooms as well as teaching classroom myself. And it would be a volunteering experience in Morocco. It's definitely a lot of capital to go there, right? Travel there and back, right? So that's definitely something I was wondering and I was thinking really hard on. And I think you just answered my question, right? So I think I'm gonna dive right into that. So yeah, because it's a whole different perspective. That's very true, right? Managing is, as far as your workforce goes and operations, it's very different compared to volunteering. Yeah, because you have to make them relate to you as an individual. Yeah.
The world of management and with coaching, like sports coaching, has changed as well. And it used to be where the boss is the boss tells, and the worker works. And it's different now. And it's changed now. You can see the replacement of coaches in professional sports leagues where they're telling, and sometimes they use the culture of intimidation. Certain things happen that shouldn't have. And those coaches are out of work now. And it's changing in management as well. There's, the Me Too movement, and you have to find a way to relate to people, and you can't, it should be fair and equitable. But when you're working with a volunteer base, a volunteer can leave at any time.
Definitely.
And so what are the things that you're going to do that will relate to the other teachers and so forth? You'll learn a lot from that opportunity, and it will teach you in a way that it's not that you can't learn from a book. It'll bring to life the lessons, because I know you're a reader. It'll bring to life the lessons that you have learned from books. And they'll become very real.
Okay. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
They need your help, so good for you.
Okay, Darwin. So tell me about a critical piece of feedback you received.
Wow. Good questions. One of the pieces of feedback I received was to really work on your strengths. And that seems simple, but I do believe that not only we should work on our strengths, but there's limited gain in working on our weaknesses. And right now in the leadership world, there's a debate about that, but I fall into the camp where I think you should work on your strengths more. And those are the things that naturally you have talent in, and to develop that to a 10 out of 10 kind of thing. And then weaknesses, you might work on them somewhat, but I don't think it should be a priority for many of us to spend too much time working on our weaknesses. So beyond that, one thing that I sort of, as I reflected on, is that we can mitigate our weaknesses. And as we, grow, and as we grow our teams or whatever that looks like, those things, those domains where we're not the strongest, those are areas where you can find ways to mitigate that. You can hire someone, you can buy a system, an app, or whatever it is to help you with those things. So as an example, for me, I'm not planning I'm okay with. I mean, like organizing, it's not my favorite. And naturally, as a part of work and the stuff I do, I have to do some of these things. But for instance, one of the things that I've put into place is some software that allows me to organize my workplace and my schedule, and outside of work, like for my business. And for the things that, like contacting people, CRM, those kinds of things, those are very important and have taken away some of the things that I'm not naturally wanting to do.
Yeah.
And therefore they're not kind of my strengths.
Yeah.
And so I saw it more like an investment in myself. So it frees up time,
Yeah.
which is far more important than if I try to teach myself or force myself to actually put, things onto the calendar. I can just have the software do that for me.
No, definitely. Yeah.
And then on the personnel front, there are some people that are very strong in some areas and that are complementary to the things that I do well.
Yeah.
And understanding people and where they're coming from is important because it allows you to reach through to those people and to find a connection where really the pieces of the puzzle fit together very well and very snug.
Yeah.
And that allows you to be able to move forward more efficiently. So one of the things that I've implemented before is there's someone that I've interacted with who's very creative, very smart, and not really into the sort of the structure of setting up the system to go with that.
Yeah.
And I'm a process and systems person.
Yeah.
So what I did is I set up the process and the system and then worked with this person and said, okay, so this is your role, because I know you don't like working with processes or systems, but person is talented in sort of innovation and doing deep research.
Definitely.
So once we had the system in place, he could do his research and all the background stuff that he needed to do, looking at the different options. That's his strength. And then once we brought it into the framework, all he had to do was list out the different options, the pros and cons, the potential impacts. And so from there, and then it fits in the system, and I have what I need, which is that I have certain inputs that I gave to him, which was the parameters around the business problems and what the business customer wants.
Yeah.
And then the output, which is what I need to bring back to the customer.
Yeah.
That's where this person excels.
Yeah.
And so that was something that worked out well. And it took us a while to figure out that system because I didn't understand him well, he didn't understand me well, and it was frustrating for both of us at first because we're working from a position where I'm here and he's here for systems and processing, and then the reverse for this deep technical area where he's strong and where I'm not.
Definitely.
But once we had the system, it kind of leveled it out, and I knew and he knew his role and what I wanted and what I could provide to him, and then what he needed and what he could provide for me, and it was very complementary. Yeah.
No, that's definitely very interesting, right? I think as an individual myself, that's something I need to work on, right? Sometimes I'll be working on a certain project and I let my weaknesses, I really dive deep into my weaknesses, and it'll just consume a lot of time, right? So being smart about it, like you said, maybe, delegating an app towards that, right? So just being smart about it and not really wasting time towards it, right? Because typically what I find is when I do dive deep into my weaknesses, most of the time it's just it'll be a little bit upfront, but most of the time no growth, not too much growth towards weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
So definitely I got to work on that myself, right? Yeah, but those two situations very, very, very good, right? Complementing each other, yeah, it's very good.
This kind of sucks away your energy rather than giving you energy.
Yeah.
And so I love, and this is so fun, being interviewed for a podcast, and I love doing podcast interviews as well. The editing part is not, I can do it, but it's not something that I really derive a lot of energy from.
Yeah.
So that was another area where it just made sense to hire someone to do that editing.
Definitely.
Where that's their thing.
Yeah.
And then so it works out, right? Yeah.
No, definitely. Yeah. So please walk me through a different scenario of a process you invented or improved.
Okay. I'll describe this as best I can. It's something I've been thinking about and I employ. And we in our work and our business, and it's talked about a lot, we all know about goal setting and the importance of goal setting, and I completely support that. Yeah. So goals are important, and they help you to get to that place that you want to be, or maybe to set things along the way as guideposts, as milestones to get you to that finish line.
Definitely.
And that's important. Goal setting is important. Yeah. And there's another kind of way of thinking, I'll say, which is, so goal setting addresses the thinking of what will I do or what will happen. Another line of thinking is what could happen. So I might do this, I might do that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like thinking in theoreticals.
Yeah.
And that's important and has its place too.
Yeah.
So something that I use with my coaching clients and also with myself regularly is would be thinking. Okay. So not will be, not could be, but would be thinking.
Yeah.
And so the format of the question is, if I was in this type of situation, what would I do?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll give you an example.
Okay. Yeah.
So Netflix, a number of years ago, uploaded the wrong version of the show Lost. The finale, they uploaded the wrong version.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, they accidentally uploaded the version that had left out 18 minutes of the show.
That's very rough.
So they heard from all the viewers, right? All the viewers are paying $14.99 a month, and they're owed that missing 18 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Netflix apologizes, and they upload the correct version with the 18 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Our lives are like this. So to date, we have lived our lives, and I think of where we are right now as the end of season 1, wherever we are.
Yeah.
Okay. And we might have goals of where we want to be in the future and what we could do.
Yeah.
But if we think of if this, what would happen, it opens up more possibilities to us than we really even conceive of.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we think about not the second season of Netflix, that whatever show you're watching, but if you think of different possible endings of season 2, and those are the possible endpoints of where you could go. And if your situation was like this, here is where you might end up. So maybe there's a 4th ending. And if your situation was like this, maybe there's a 5th ending.
Yeah.
So then you have these different seasons of the new show. And then you work back to present time and you think, what is my way of getting to the ending in each of these different shows? And that changes your way of thinking because it takes your thinking, your consciousness outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. And it gives you a frame of thinking of what would I do if I was in this situation?
Yeah.
So you might have heard the question, if you couldn't fail, what would you do? That's a question it's a good question, and it's a common coaching question. Yeah. And so it's more intentionally using that idea to say, what are the different scenarios that I might not have considered that are limiting me?
Yeah.
So one problem with goal setting is that it drives you in a single direction to that finish point of where you want to be.
Yeah.
But what if that finish point is wrong?
Yeah.
And so if you put yourself into what I think of as would-be thinking, it allows you to change that scenario with different possible endings, and you can get to something maybe you didn't conceive of, but that if you think this way, it broadens your horizon.
Definitely.
So an example of where I've used this is with someone who was struggling with reaching sort of their effectiveness at work, let's say.
Yeah.
And a relationship with their boss and relating to other people because English was a second language. Okay. And so when we went through this process, as I've described, we thought, well, what are the various endings to the second season that we could think of? Yeah. And this person came up with a number of different endings that were quite different, but still satisfied the base criteria of relating to the boss better, being confident, even though there was an accent, but the other person could understand. It doesn't matter if you have an accent or not. Yeah. This person spoke excellent English. It was just definitely in their mind. And so going through the different ideas of, well, where could you end up at the end? Yeah. What does that look like? Yeah. And then from the possible endings, picking one or two and then moving back in time to the present time. Yeah. That's my next scene. Yeah. And then I'm going to write that scene in my mind, and then I'm going to enact it.
Well, it's very interesting. Very interesting.
So I think of it as would-be thinking. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's a very, very interesting analogy. You know, actually, I was watching Jeff Bezos' interview one time, and he basically used the same analogy, right, of thinking backwards, right? Like, so imagine you're 80 now. Now start coming backwards, right, on different possibilities that can go from there. So it's very interesting that you think that way, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something I need to do myself, right? Sometimes we do get fixated on a certain goal, right? We need by this time, but instead of that, think of possibilities, right? Of different endings, right? So that's definitely something myself I need to work on.
Yeah, and often we journal. And journal, a lot of people will reflect and self-reflect as meditation, all kinds of things. And so for me, I think another thing we should be adding to that is thinking to ourselves, if this, what would happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that broadens our horizons beyond what's immediately in front of us, because sometimes we don't see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that is definitely a very good answer. As a vicious reader myself, just to end the podcast off in a good way, is there any books that you would recommend?
Some of my favorite books are, I'm a John Maxwell guy, I'm a leadership coach.
Yeah.
And so the 5 Levels of Leadership is excellent.
Okay.
And the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership is excellent. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is excellent. From the financial world, which also, it almost has more leadership lessons than financial lessons, is The Millionaire Next Door.
Okay.
And it's because it talks not only about, the basic idea is that there's millionaires all around us,
Yeah.
but we have no idea that they are.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it's only when they studied and asked questions that they realized they're not at all like what we might expect.
Yeah.
And it was as a result of, I'm going to go on a tangent here, if that's okay.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect for me.
It was as a result of, I was never going to mention, my net worth to anyone.
Yeah.
And there's reasons to do that. But,
Yeah.
but it was not until I met someone who was very successful, far more successful than I was, but I was more accomplished in the stock investment world than he was.
Definitely. Yeah.
Is when he said, you can give some advice to me. And he said, Darwin, you have to show other people who are walking your path, might not have a good retirement or might be working a salary, how to find early financial freedom, which is what I found.
Yeah.
And so it's when he said that I thought, okay, this is my chance to help other people.
Definitely.
And that's kind of the path that I'm going down. It kind of changed the direction I was going to go. And so when I went public with it, so to speak, some of my friends were quite shocked because
you don't come off as that.
I don't have, the expensive jewelry and stuff like that. And I drive, a normal car, so to speak. Yeah. We talked about a Tesla. Maybe that's in the future, but I don't drive one right now, right? And so that's the Millionaire Next Door helped in a lot of ways because it teaches you the habits of millionaires and how they became successful. I learned a lot of lessons from that. Yeah, it's a series of books, but that book.
Yeah. I'm definitely glad you became public, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to pick at your brain today, right?
I appreciate that very much.
Very glad, man. Very glad, yeah. Yeah, you're very successful, man. I'm looking forward to see what you do next, right? It's been a pleasure sitting down and talking to you. You did very good. So just as a warm welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you,
man. Yeah.
I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Yeah,
thank you. Definitely a great time, man. I look forward to having you back on the podcast, man.
Yeah, and I'll be tracking your career. Thank you so much. What an honor.
Thank you.